Good evening, everybody. I'm very excited to see you here, and we have some people with us on Zoom. We are recording this. We're on the record. My name is Anat Admati, and I am the founder and with Paul Fleiter, co-faculty director of the Corporations and Society Initiative here at Stanford Graduate School of Business. CASI focuses on promoting effective governance and accountability to make sure that corporations serve society, and that includes all the different institutions and people that the corporations interact with. And what we do is encourage broad and deep understanding and big picture thinking, which is what we're going to do today. Without the habit of looking at the broader context, it's more likely that people with power, leaders, will even inadvertently abuse their power, cause harm to other people and to the system. So we want to really get in the habit of thinking about the broader picture. Today's topic is labor unions, and we have the best panelists. We're very excited that Faiz Shakir could join us today. He'll be introduced later by our moderator. Moderator Juan Saez worked in McKinsey before becoming an MBA student. So he's a second-year MBA student. Time flies, so he's about to graduate. And importantly, Juan is among the amazing set of students we are lucky to get as leaders, student leaders of CASI. And they bring the energy and oftentimes the content as well, which is the case in this case, in the particular topic we're talking about. Juan had a passion to understand unions better, and he wanted us to bring this content. Because of that, we already organized an event about unions in the fall on November 29th, and you can read about it and watch the video on CASI's website under News, and it was entitled Labor in America, Past, Present, and Future of Unions. So you might say, why are we doing another event on union? And that is because there was a lot of demand that we continue to have this discussion. In that event in the fall, we had two labor unions, very thoughtful, as well as a regional director of the National Labor Relations Board from Oakland, who explained to students a little bit more about the legal context of labor union in the United States, in particular, the National Labor Relations Act of 1935 that created the National Labor Relations Board, which enforces that law. So we don't really talk that much about the law and the framework of the law in this particular school, but it's very important to understand that because the law is there to protect people's rights and to create some kind of a balance of power, in this case maybe fairness in the relationship between employers and workers. We also actually have another event related to this in 2 days on Thursday, which is about employees' ownership, and that will feature Pete Stavros, Global Head of Private Equity at KKR and founder of Nonprofit Ownership Works. So the events around labor are hitting us very close to home as it happens, and that is because against the interest of our own university, which argued against it. In 2016, the National Labor Relations Board decided that graduate students are employees and who serve as research assistant, teaching assistants, but also their students are employees and do have the right to organize. And after that, and since then, graduate students have organized in many universities, and this has come to Stanford. So earlier this month, April, we learned that that the students here, Stanford Graduate Workers Union, publicly launched a unionization campaign. So faculty and others have received all kinds of emails about the law, certainly written by lawyers about what we can and can't say, what we can and can't do, because we're considered managers somehow in this context. So I won't say much more so I don't get into legal trouble about this topic. And I don't think we'll discuss it because in the grand scheme of things, the Graduate Student Union is not like the biggest issue in the world, but it is important for these people and for the universities. Anyway, I'll let Juan, who is one of our amazing leaders, take it from here. Thank you.
Thanks, Anat. Okay, so Anat laid a good context, but so last year, CASI set out to host a panel discussion on the pressing issues around labor today. We were able to bring together leaders from multiple unions, the Service Employees International Union, SEIU, International Longshore and Warehouse Union, ILWU, along with the National Labor Relations Board. Today, I'm excited to introduce a critical voice on the future of organized labor and worker power in America, Faiz Shakir. In our introductory chat last week, Faiz said he doesn't really like to talk about himself too much, so I'll try to front load that myself before diving into the issues with our limited time. Faiz is the executive director of the nonprofit media organization, More Perfect Union. They publish short-form video reporting diving into labor movements on the front lines, from Kroger to Hollywood to Sun Country Airline throughout the United States. Their spotlight on the humans behind the struggles offers a refreshing perspective in the National Union narrative. Previously, Faiz was the campaign manager for Bernie Sanders' 2020 presidential campaign and still serves as advisor to Senator Sanders. He's also been an aide to congressional leaders Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid. He was also editor-in-chief of Think Progress blog in its early years and political director for the ACLU. So one request from Faiz right before we dive into questions was tough questions around the practical and theoretical utility and drawbacks of unionized labor for business and society. I'll try to bring some of these questions, but I do encourage the group to bring these up once we open it up to general Q&A. For now, I'll take about 30 minutes to start the conversation with Faiz, and then we'll dive into the group's questions. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Anything I missed before we dive in?
That was a lot.
Okay.
Boring stuff.
All right, fun stuff now. So unions are, this long-standing institution and are credited for enduring protections such as the 40-hour work week, overtime pay, and the weekend. So what is top of mind for organized labor today? What's its weekend?
Well, first of all, thanks for the invitation to you, Juan, Professor. Appreciate getting to know you through this process, and nice to meet all of you guys. So I hope, as Juan mentioned, I'd love for this to be a conversation. I entered this conversation with humility, as I try to in every conversation. I guarantee there's things and perspectives that you have that I don't, and I hope that they'll come out through our conversation, and you can help better inform me. The state of organized labor, there's no surprise to you guys that the pandemic was a major turning point in our history and understanding of workers. And I think the primary lens and the problem that we witnessed through the pandemic is that people had felt like their toiling and their struggle was unseen and unheard and unappreciated. And it was. That's the hard truth. For many in a management class, there was a failure of management for decades to truly give a damn about the people who are delivering the productivity for their businesses. And a reckoning came during the pandemic in which something that had been boiling for decades and decades, something that Senator Sanders, I think, had galvanized in 2015, speaking to, I think, a silent pain and suffering at that time. If you think about why did Bernie gather so much momentum around his agenda, it was the sense that people, working people in particular, working class, that word class, were unseen, unheard, unappreciated, and that their issues were not part of the discourse in the station. And what has changed, obviously, is that the pandemic took a silent pain and suffering and slapped us all across the face and made you feel it. And so we come out of it, and so if you ask the question where we stand now with labor, to their credit, and I do think there's a lot of credit to the Biden administration for coming in, the thing that they did that they don't talk about, but that they did do, is they engaged in the labor market, and they changed the labor market. That's what they did. They got involved, and they said, there's now a wage floor in America, right? There's going to be a stimulus. There's going to be unemployment insurance. There's going to be a child tax credit. There's going to be pandemic EBT cards. There's going to be resources going directly in to particularly the bottom 60, 70% of America, most of whom are living paycheck to paycheck. And what is it? You all know what paycheck to pay, Bernie says it all the time, but to reflect on that for a moment, because I think we do, one of the problems of labor organizing and the thing we're after is, can we enter into the bubble that we are not currently in? So when you think about paycheck to paycheck, the people who have zero in their checking account or savings account after 2 weeks, and they're begging for that next paycheck so they can get to the next 2 weeks. That's the subsistence of tens of millions of people in America. And so if you think about that struggle, and you say, okay, we went through a pandemic, we raised the wage floor thanks to Biden Democratic-led efforts, and the labor market got stronger as a result. There's now competition. If you listen to many of the CEOs now, they bemoan, so hard to hire. Man, workers have so many opportunities. They don't want to work. They don't want to work. They don't want to work for our wages. They don't work for our shitty benefits. They don't want to work for our temp offer. You're like, right. The tables have turned a bit. And so now we're reassessing what the labor market should be and can be. And one of the most inspiring things of the last few years is that, and this is what we set out with More Perfect Union. To be clear, while I am a labor opinionator, I don't have any members. I am not a labor union leader. My hat is off to those who do. Organizing is hard. I've done it on a campaign in other places, the ACLU, it's hard. What has happened in the last 2 years, and that we've tried to inspire through More Perfect Union, is people have power to do something in their own. You do not necessarily have to go to the UAW, the Teamsters, the AFL-CIO, or any of those places. You can organize your Trader Joe's, you can organize your Starbucks, you can organize your Apple store. And that has been a shot in the arm. I mean, if you look at the Workers United Starbucks baristas, of course, the major success of this is that more and more people at this moment have power and feel empowered, that they know how to go through a process in which to get a seat at the table to negotiate their working conditions, their wages, and their benefits, and that's a great thing.
So on that note specifically around going around those old boys clubs, all the old institutions that led a lot of the union movements in the past, do you find that a new union movement is a prerequisite for a better allocation of unions' resources towards the things that matter, like organizing, recruiting, strikes?
So we should have a conversation. This is where I want to hear, and this will be a recurring conversation with you all about what is the value of a union in a workplace. Right, I imagine we're going to have this like in a variety of facets and forms. And I think you're hitting at the most obvious, and certainly the thing I care deeply about is that if you have a society of growing income inequality, we have to, address it with allowing people who are the losers in the debate to have a chance to win and improve their working conditions and their wages and their benefits. That's certainly prime about the way I think about it. But I'm also mindful that I'm in a business school audience, and there's a lot of people who you've been propagated a lot of views about why labor unions are inefficient, terrible, hurt business ability to get off the ground, do things. And my argument, and I've in addition to arguing for labor unions, I've also managed labor unions. Right, like at the ACLU, we had a labor union, unionized workforce. Bernie Sanders' first presidential campaign staff that was ever unionized, and even our More Perfect Union staff about to, hopefully get to a collective bargaining agreement here in the near future. So I personally not only advocate for unions, but I can give a perspective of having to manage them from a management perspective. And there's a lot of elements there that matter, I think. For me, as a manager looking at a unionized workforce, the things that I really appreciate is when you get into some larger organizations, one of the problems and challenges, and maybe you've already experienced it, is communication with a large number of people. How the hell, like at our peak, Bernie Sanders' staff was 1,200 people, spread out over like 30 states at that time. And so we were all over the place. And there's no good CEO, manager, director, I don't care how amazing you are, there is no way you're gonna be able to talk to 1,200 people and figure out if there's issues. So one is, let me premise and make this assumption, you should care. I hope that many of you do, but like I'm talking to a business class, you should care about knowing what's going on in your organization. What are your frontline employees dealing with? And if you do care, let's make that assumption, I hope you do, then how are you going to figure it out? How are you going to get the inputs to understand, oh, we had a payment issue here, or the work hour problem there, or the sick leave issue here. It's not working for us for this variety of reasons, and here in Iowa for the following reasons. We couldn't stand up this field office. We're not getting the right materials. How are you going to get those inputs? And you would hope, yes, for sure, that things are going to go up through a chain and that they'll be addressed. But in the moments and the instances that they're not, unions play a huge and amazing and an important role of ensuring that there can be communication within a large organization and cohesion within it. And obviously, there's a lot of assumptions built in the cohesion argument, which we can talk about. But I think that I think from a business side perspective is really critical to how do you build conversation and cohesion with huge numbers of employees.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point to kind of dig into some of those more bottom line driven arguments, especially when you talk about business management and unions. So let's take Amazon as an example. They've spent millions of dollars fighting unionization efforts over the past year and have largely won ever since the Staten Island union effort last year that actually succeeded in the first place. The $14.2 million spent by Amazon on anti-unionization campaigns and consultants in 2022 pales in comparison to the expected expense of meeting workers' demands for fair working practices, for better lifestyle, et cetera. So as long as Amazon doesn't break the law,
right,
why should for-profit corporations like Amazon seeking to maximize shareholder value behave any differently? Are there any and I'll save this for later, but are there any corporations that have done the opposite of what Amazon
Right, I mean, they are breaking the law. But I think in addition to breaking the law, ultimately they're setting a workplace of 1.5 million people. 1.5 million. This is, there's such a social responsibility there. And, that's what I get into, is just like, do you give a shit about people? And also that becomes the bottom line threshold question. It's like there's 1.5 million people whose lives could be certainly improved upon with the billions and billions of dollars in profits. How many of them have equity in Amazon, right? Part of when they raised the wages to 15, one of the things they did is they cut most warehouse workers out of getting equity in the organization. Crazy, right? Not crazy from their perspective. Bottom line, right? If you stop just basically giving a damn about whether this becomes the fundamental question. As a large employer who's trying to build a workforce, do you see them as people who you respect and want to build an opportunity in life to grow into something that is sustainable? And I don't think, and the danger of where we live now with large corporations, Walmart, I mean, you look at the largest employers in America, Walmart, Amazon, and we go down the list of Kroger, and you think of the large numbers of people who work there. You have the biggest corporations in America who are telling all of these millions of people, we don't want you for more than a year. We don't want you for more than 2 years. Get the hell out. Come and do the hard job. We're going to grind you, but don't stay, because we don't want to offer you any health care benefits. We want this to be a temp thing. We're churning and burning here. And the question for us is, you can make this business argument, right? The business efficiency argument. We're just churning and burning through. Is at what point are we arguing that there's some degree of a social responsibility? And you could argue to me that, well, it's not Amazon's job and Walmart's job. Great, then I'll make it the government's job. I'll make it the government's job. And our part of the government's job is going to be, we're going to be on your ass. And we're going to make you pay for child care facilities. We're going to make you pay for paid sick leave. We're going to set some floors here. If you can't do it yourself, yeah, we're getting involved. Because the scale of human suffering that is going on here, of the churns of $14, $15 an hour of people trying to basically make it, and as I mentioned, zero in their checking savings account after 2 weeks. That is not a recipe for just the basics of human dignity existence, and we're starting to feel the suffering and the fallout of that. Life expectancy going down, right? I mean, the quality of life, people, the mental health issues that we're dealing with, young people mental health issues. These are all, I think, related. They're not the separate issues. They're all related. And so when you throw figures out, you can always make a business efficiency argument that I don't need to give a damn about people. And if they don't want to, and they certainly have indicated and argued for it, then you're setting yourself up for a fight. That's it. You've chosen. You've said, don't come to me, Jeff Bezos or Andy Jassy, complaining about the union or Howard Schultz. Oh man, this union is making so things hard. Oh really? Yeah. Isn't that what you did? Structurally, you chose this fight. You told them to go to hell. You didn't want them there for any more than a year. Say, hey, you're college students, get the hell out of my, organization. Don't try to change any of our incentives and benefits here. And by the way, when they organized, they changed the incentives and the benefits of Starbucks. You're welcome, right? But suddenly they want to tell workers, don't give a damn that of you staying here or caring about your well-being. And so, yeah, the workers are right to pick a fight. Now you've turned it into combat. And so now the act of unionization necessarily becomes a middle finger to the boss. And I think, that is in many places where we're at, is that you're fighting because there is an unwillingness in many of these quarters to sit down and negotiate, to just literally sit down and talk about a first contract. Well, not even sit down with them. They just refuse to sit down with them. Like the first second that Buffalo was going to organize the Starbucks worker, suddenly Howard Schultz is parachuting in. We got CEOs all over, CFOs. Suddenly we're just mopping floors in the rooms. Oh really? You suddenly started to give a damn. Your bottom line was impacted, and it was such a damn threat to you that instead of just sitting down and treating some people with decency and hearing their, what their perspectives and views might be, you just see them as the enemy. And so it's been a war. They've chosen a warlike mentality, and they should be expecting that the working class is going to fight back. And that I'm honored and happy to play a role in helping working class people play a role in fighting back.
So diving into kind of the social value argument, and then the associated potential social responsibility actions by corporations or government intervention.
At this point, it's government intervention. I mean, I'm not naive about this. I would love, we live in the United States of America. You will all help inform me of the business class mindset in this country. We have created structural incentives for CEOs. I mean, Alan Shaw of Norfolk Southern, right? This guy is just thinking about how's my investor class going to feel about the stock buybacks, and how do I give them the fingers in the pot that they deserve here. I can't do paid sick leave. I can't expand wages and benefits. I can't get 3 people on a train. We have to keep this down to 2-person trains. Really? That's crazy. Of course you can do 3 people on a train. Oh no, but structurally incentives that once I changed my bottom line at Norfolk Southern, all the investors of the Buffetts of the world are they going to run for the hills and they're going to go somewhere else. So you created a downward spiral. I hate to feel I need to create sympathy for a CEO. I really don't. But you created all of these people in structural incentives where it's a downward cycle. If one of them wanted to step out, and Howard Schultz or whomever wanted to say, hey, I'm going to sit down with this negotiation with this union. We're going to negotiate. We're going to strike a new contract. The whole be a conniption fit, right? About the CEO class. What the hell are you doing? So I don't know how many of you follow the NFL, but I liken, these are all kind of related, but Deshaun Watson, quarterback for a few years ago, signed a contract, right? 5-year guarantee, right, as a quarterback. This was crazy. The owners of the NFL went ballistic. Are you kidding me? 5 years guarantee for a quarterback? We ain't doing that ever again. So now you have all these quarterbacks coming on the market, Jalen Hurts, whatever. None of them, Jalen Hurts just signed, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, 3-year guarantee, right? They're no 5-year guarantees here. The ownership class is not cool with that. We are busting this stuff up. And that's where you have a CEO class where we are not cool with it. You sitting down trying to talk about and find quote unquote reasonability with workers. So if you've got these structural incentives going downward, pulling, then it has to be a responsibility of government to change the conditions, the structural rules by which corporations play and institute, both on the worker, benefit side, which we're talking childcare and paid sick leave, just the basics, right? And installing a decent livable wage, So that's one thing. But then on the other side, we all know, I mean, larger corporations just get too much power. And I wear two hats. One of the organizations I'm proud to support is American Economic Liberties Project. Like, break up large corporations. So we like both through taxation, but also through anti-monopoly efforts. And I think the political power associated with these large corporations is immense. I see it every day in Washington, D.C. One of the challenges around this that is underappreciated about the power of large corporations is that we now live in an age, and you guys know it well, that complexity is one of the biggest issues we deal with. If you are a working person who is at Amazon, you have no idea how the transparency of those books operates and what they spend money on, what the hell they go. It'd be impossible for us to figure out in some ways. I mean, the complexity and the rules and the regulations, the way they do their union busting, all done in ways that adhere closer and closer to needing an expert consultant class on all things. Consultant class to lobby, a consultant class to do your taxes, a consultant class to set HR policies, all done in a way that no regular human can decipher. It's impossible. We would like, and so that you've got a bunch of lawyers and business people who've set conditions that are impossible for us to figure out. And the system has just been, that to me has been the most obvious effect of I see in Washington, D.C., that you have a lot of people who are members of Congress, regulators, who are struggling to understand what they're trying to regulate. And I enter this with humility. As I said, I want to learn from you guys, but I entered into it when we started with More Perfect Union. I was understanding that one of the things that I'm trying to close the gap on is understanding the modern economy. That's it. That's just like a straight, simple stick. Like, for regular working people, what the hell is a stock buyback? Why does it exist? Like, just pull yourself back and just ask the question, how did this even happen? How does it get preferred in the tax code? What is the structural reason for it? How does it then, how does it have impacts on your where the profits go, the choices, policy choices that corporations make? Like, these are interesting questions, but all way, I mean, they're way up in the clouds for most people. And we're trying desperately to bring them down to people to help unpack it, understand it. But every day I live with an angst that there's so much complexity that I feel bad for a Dollar General worker trying to figure out how the hell Dollar General decides to shut down various stores in certain places and open stores in other places. Like, no chance that they'll understand that, right? And it's all being leveraged against them. It's not nobody looking out for their benefit. We could get into a leadership ethics class, right? I subscribe to the idea of leaders eat last kind of philosophy, where your job as a leader is look out for people. And the bargain of most people is that when you sit in the CEO management seats, do you care about me? Do you care? And I don't think there's not enough of it. And as a result, you have, in my view, in the modern economy, a management class that's now buffered from its own employees. Buffered, like don't even know it. Many of you had this experience. I'd check in a hotel. How many of you had this experience where you go in, it could be an airline, it could be a coffee shop, it could be a hotel. You go in and you try to check in and you're in a line of like 40 people and you're just tearing your hair out, like, holy shit, and there's one person trying to either check you in, make your coffee, and you're just like, oh my God, like, why is there only one person working here? And so I want to like call the Hilton CEO. Like, that's what I really want to do. I want to get the damn CEO on the line and be like, you have one person at this damn Manhattan check-in line. This is crazy. You need 3 people, and if you need 4 people, you need to help this person out. What has happened there? There's like 16 layers above. That CEO doesn't know or give a damn what's happening in this one location there. But you know what I will get? You guys know this. After I go through a process, I'm going to get my "How was your experience?" email. And the "How your experience" email is was the customer service rep friendly to you? Why don't you snoop on that person? Tell me if she or he who was dealing with a shitstorm at the front desk was nice. Was she nice? Okay, well, if she wasn't, we'll fire her. Oh, really? Yeah, that person who was like, in my mind, I still sit with think about the, sorry, I'm rambling now, but like, I'm gonna end with this story, and then hear from you. Think about Christmas Day. This is the one that sits in my head. Christmas Day, you want to work and you're getting your time and a half, right? You're struggling. You work at Southwest Airlines, and you go into the service desk in Texas to work time and a half on Christmas Day to try to bring back money for your family. What just happened to your life? Thousands of airlines were canceled. People rushing to the front desk, hundreds and hundreds of people crying their tears out, yelling at you because you need to get me on a different flight. I need to get back home. My kids, the stories. And here's 3 people sitting at the front desk. That's the empathy that I want to feel and hear from a CEO. I don't give a shit. Like, don't go at CNBC and tell me about your bottom line. I'm like, do you care? Do you even feel that? Like, that person came in as a loyal person of your company and dealt with hell for you. And and by the way, emotional health, mental health. I mean, think about when people are coming up with the stories and legitimate and I'm sure sincere stories of why they had to get home for Christmas. And now, they dealt, and those things just, they grab me, they hurt my soul. And I'm like, I don't think we have enough in a business class that feels that, in a management class that cares in that way. And that's what we're trying to deal with.
Yeah, I want to turn it over to the group soon. I just have one more question before that. So on this note of acting with more empathy when we're in management, let's say we fast forward 10 years and one of us in the room is the CEO of a Fortune 500 retailer. For the first time in the company's history, one of our stores has voted to unionize. So how should we respond in a way that can create a win-win situation for us?
I give you the same advice I give to myself. This is what I've done, right? Say, we welcome it. Would love to sit down and chat. Let's talk about it. Let's talk. Tell me about the issues that are going on. How can we improve this workplace so that you stay here and you feel happy here? Or if you're comfortable in your own skin about the policies that you've set, I happen to be a type of manager that Malia and Nico here, both in my organization, I tend to get sometimes maybe too micromanaging involved, but I like to know what is going on in the organization. And I want all of you who might lead an organization to feel the same way. I want to know about the widgets we make. Don't run Starbucks because you don't drink the damn coffee and know how it's made. Like, the financialization of all these companies, I get, yes, you can learn all about finance and accounting, and I appreciate that you will know how to run the books. Know the coffee too, right? Just really get into, and the experience of the barista making the coffee, and the experience of the workers who have, in the toilet they go through. And so if you feel comfortable that you have an understanding of it, and maybe you don't know everything about it, you should feel ready to sit down in radical candor and just discuss things. And this gets into a more political point, but that we all need to be in a place where, and I said it's my own team, where we have to deal with disagreement. That a healthy organization isn't one that never has disagreement. A healthy organization has disagreement and manages through disagreement. That's a healthy organization. We disagreed, you respected that I have a difference of opinion. I understand that you run the railroad here, you're the director, you make the decisions. I feel like I gave you appropriate input, we move, right? But if I don't feel like you even want to sit down and hear me, you don't want to talk, you don't want to know what is affecting me, I don't feel like this organization cares about me, right? And it's so basic. And now I think we've gotten to a place where the values are not there and lawyers just govern the show. So as soon as as soon as any unionizing, Trader Joe's thing, you can almost feel, the lawyer scurrying. Oh, here we go. Like the lawyer's calling the shots. And as a law school grad, I hate it, right? It's ridiculous. Get the damn lawyers out of the building. Go sit down with your workers and figure this stuff out. Don't have somebody tell them about, oh, you might have violated some rule, didn't follow this current appropriate procedure. We're going to, argue that this was an appropriate union, or all the stupid union busting tactics that just if you care about the organization, go talk to people who might have some issues with it, and I think make an assumption that the people who might be organizing actually want this workplace to be better. And I think too often the approach of the CEO mindset is that they want to destroy it. of course, if you don't give a damn and talk to them, yeah, that's what you're telling them. That you're each like setting yourself for combat and warfare. Just sit down and talk to them. And like to this day, right? Like think of how many people have organized. I mentioned Apple stores and Trader Joe's, and you go down no first contracts. No, people aren't sitting down and striking deals. It's a cancer, and obviously it's meant to dispirit people that you don't go through the effort, don't find a way to organize because we're going to stomp on your butt. When this could all be easily, I think, pretty amicably resolved. And I understand that, then we get into structural incentives of a CEO striking a deal, and that's the problem. That you're going to be you're a bad CEO.
All right, let's turn it to the audience. Any questions? Yeah, please share.
Thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it. My question is kind of like, I guess I'd observe that like companies like Amazon, some of these big employers, it feels like they're constantly reinventing themselves. They're reinventing their management practices. They're reinventing their use of technology. They're playing around constantly in ways that might be helpful for their company, might be harmful for labor, but regardless, they're changing. I'm curious to hear your perspective how unions are evolving over time to kind of rise to meet that challenge as companies become more sophisticated in all sorts of dimensions. How are unions, how are they evolving? Where aren't they evolving? Kind of where internally and structurally do you think they need to evolve in order to compete effectively with organizations like Walmart, Starbucks, et cetera?
What's your name?
Robert.
Hey, Robert. Nice to meet you. Well, structurally, we know the challenge for large unions is that they're losing members, and it's going down. It's on a track over now multiple decades of going in one direction until just recently. I think we're starting to see a little bit of an uptick, and I'm hopeful it carries on. But the structural problem that many unions are dealing with is that they're on the losing end of labor law, right? It just doesn't help them. If they haven't historically had a union at a Kroger's or wherever, it's very hard to break in now in this modern environment and establish a new one and get a first contract. And I think that the challenge of many unions, and I say this with respect to them because one of the things I really feel strongly is that it's such a damn hard job. And I respect it a lot. I wouldn't want it, and I appreciate that they do it. That said, the big challenge that they have is when you start to shrink the room, right? Like however many people we've got in this room. Imagine we took this and mirroring the decline of union membership, we cut the room down to a third of what it is right now. My psychology in that room is, me and Juan are left, I'm going to hug Juan even tighter. We got to be best friends here. We got to hang. We're like the last, warriors of this. This ship is going down. There's a lot of people not here. We hug tighter, try to hold on. And that's where they're at. I think that to your point of evolution, it's really maintenance of current membership. And that it is a major focus for a lot of them is how do we keep, the UPS workers on? How do we keep, GM workers on? And because of that, the desire is to go ahead and have contracts that we all know aren't really great. You could be a unionized worker at a Jeep plant in Lordstown, Ohio, right now, and unionized worker as a temp and making $17 an hour with no health care benefits. Right? You could be a unionized worker at a Kellogg's facility, under BCTGM, and you could be working 16 hours during the pandemic, 7 days a week. Right? And so the theory and the thesis of what we heard, Juan to say it out front, is that the unionized workforce established these great, conditions for working people. The reality of many unionized workforces, they're also suffering. And part of the reason is because unions are grasping to those members, holding on and striking these contracts that are rough. And so that evolution has been challenging for them. So as you hold on to these unions, what are you not doing? You're not finding new members. You're not investing in new members. You're not taking the risks, because it ends up becoming like a business decision. It's risks of go and unionize a new place at an Amazon. right? That's an investment, hard, and maybe not worth the returns when I can just maintain what I got going on here. And so what has changed, of course, is in the last 2 years is we've inspired people to do it themselves. The Christian Smalls is now going to do it, right? He's not. I'm a worker here. I'm gonna figure this out. We're gonna organize our workplace, and in some sense, I feel it's even stronger, right? Because now you and I know what the argument of business class is against the unions. Which here we don't want a third party. Well, now there's no third party. This is the worker right here. This person who works at your facility. This is just two parties, and they want to talk to you. So I think that's a helpful thing, and I think the change for a lot of unions, and we see this with Sean Fain at the UAW, we see this with Sean O'Brien at the Teamsters, is going to be more combative. Because you've pushed many of the union leaders into having, with more direct elections at many of these unions, the memberships are demanding more confrontation, a confrontation mindset. That if I feel like I'm getting assaulted at my workplace because no one gives a damn, I want somebody to feel it and drive that emotion for me. And you're going to have more, I think, you're going to have more combative union leaders. That's the evolution, I think, about to come. And I think that's probably healthy for the course of things. It's probably going to be unhealthy for many CEOs that are going to love it. And will be disruptive. But out of the disruption, we should hopefully get better outcomes for most people.
I guess quick follow-up on that. We've seen a lot of more like outside of the normal confines of the traditional unions efforts, like at Starbucks, et cetera. But labor union participation hasn't really ticked up, and we're still at a low since the 1950s. What do you think is still causing that very low union participation rate, and do you think we're actually at an inflection point? What's going to potentially drive exponential growth?
Well, the big union, if you think of the areas where there has been success, it's on these campuses, right? Everywhere you've had a lot of grad students, workers. You have a lot. Those have actually been struck in positive ways where there's first contracts, and part of my takeaway of that is that's where you have the generational divide most clearly. Like if you think of where the most hunger for unions are, it's it's people even younger than you and me, right? Who are going to lead that charge, and where they enter into, and the workforces they enter into are going to be the spots. I think they're by their own nature prepared both in the way that they think about work and the way they think about management, the way they think of their responsibilities, are prepared, I think, whether they're newsrooms or whether they're hospitals, wherever they might land, I think that they're far more willing to go in that direction. So I see it less as like industry issues and more of a generational one, that as this generation enters into the workforce in the places that they go and decide to work at, it's coming for wherever you might be. And I hope as a management leader that you are prepared and ready to do it the right way rather than the wrong way, because otherwise we're just setting ourselves up for, combat.
Louise?
Thank you so much for being here. It's been a really interesting discussion. Curious to go back to kind of the structural issues that we have gotten ourselves entangled in, as you were speaking of earlier. And I think fully agree with no CEO has the incentive to be the one to defect and sit down with a union. And yet, and so then I think government needs to step in, and yet all these companies also hold a lot of political sway. So I guess curious to see if you see any movement where companies are recognizing hey, if we don't want to have to negotiate with unions, then we need better policies so then we can justify this to our shareholders that we're doing these things that are right for our employees and our shareholders aren't going to push back on us. Is there any movement there, or do you see any shift in how we can start to tackle those structural issues?
I've been targeted a bit around Michigan.
Louise.
There's been a movement among some shareholders, and I will give a tip of the hat to Trillium Investment, Brad Lander, a comptroller up there with their pension fund, who have been willing and wanting to bring shareholder resolutions that do this, and say, I want an audit of your labor management practices. And this is just passed actually in Starbucks. You might know that. And so they're now having to go through an audit and figure out, well, what's the churn? Or basic questions like, Do we take care of our people? Do we care about that? Can we set up different structures? To your point, can we set up different structures? How are we going to deal and address the large numbers of our people who feel like they want to sit down and talk about stuff? Are we going to have some kind of forum? If it's not, I would hope that it's a first contract. I think, as I understand the situation now, I believe that they are having some regional conversations at least, so that's a positive step forward under the new CEO. I'm holding out a little bit of hope that maybe a new CEO change there would propel at least productive conversations. But to your point, I think certainly when you think of large businesses, that's where we have to live. It's like, okay, large shareholders, large institutions, pension funds getting involved and saying, like, I care about your management practices and I care about you changing the way you view labor. And it's going to be, more push. But we're obviously missing the other major element is smaller businesses around communities in America. And I think that there's, a case to be made for a lot of smaller businesses that if you're setting up an effective small electrical servicing company, or an HVAC servicing company, you're going to install heat pumps, you're going to be involved in rooftop solar, that those jobs of the future are going to also potentially require advanced training and apprenticeship. And going back to some of the arguments I would make for unions, good, healthy unions also are critical in helping the workforce improve their own skills. It becomes a place of civic society, a union is. It's a place of gathering and mentorship and learning from each other and caring for each other and hearing about how to do a job better. And when unions are most effective, they are investing in caring about that too, and they're playing a role in it. And so if you were a smaller business and you're trying to get off the ground, the opportunities for unions is to partner with you and say, we got feeders into you. We're going to actually preference you. And we're sending like our advanced, like some of our talented people that we're working to develop, and they're going to go work with you, and we're going to strike some partnerships. Particularly, and I say this with the backdrop of federal funding through the implementation, right, is to say, okay, if we're remaking the marketplace and we have federal dollars to spend, this is the way I want to do it, right? Like, these are conditions. I don't have to give you money, Micron, unless you, build a child care facility, but also like, I'm going to make a more competitive marketplace, and I'm going to create incentives that say the unionized workforce or apprenticeship programs are going to be preferred, prevailing wages, healthcare benefits, all preferred, and that's the way we're going to rebalance things, particularly when we have this incredible opportunity where billions and billions of dollars are going to go into remaking a modern economy. So that's one of the current things that I'm deeply invested in and I'm hopeful for, that some of these federal dollars could end up changing incentive structures for different kinds of businesses. I'm not going to hold out hope that Amazon's going to change, no. But I think new, like EV, related facility, new smaller car maker or car supply, auto part suppliers, those kinds of things, I absolutely think they would change. They could change. Absolutely, they could change, because a federal investment in them that says we prefer these kinds of things, they could be more willing to do those things. Boom, we're off and running.
Yeah, Rachel.
One of the stats I've heard is that union support for unions is at like a pretty high rate, one of the all-time highs. Yeah, 63%. Big gap, obviously, between the reality of being willing to join a union, working in a business, and actually supporting it. In the context of that gap, I'm curious how you've thought about your kind of target market for a more perfect union. Video is obviously a very powerful medium. How do you think about like sustaining engagement and actually like shifting the conversation? Is it with young people? Is it with like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know how many of you are familiar with More Perfect Union? Have any of you seen any of these videos? Okay, so I'll just give you a very brief preface on it, that we've 2 years ago set out to create a journalistic outfit, advocacy journalistic outfit, and I'll own the word advocacy in it. That, for those of you who might get into journalism, I believe strongly in advocacy journalism. It comes with a perspective. I own that perspective. I own an editorial bias. That means that we have vision and mission attached to it. We like certain outcomes. We'll own that we like certain outcomes. I am for a union in a workplace, for instance. But it also means that once we decide to cover a story, we try to cover it as honestly and fairly and present, basic truths and facts. in the form of journalism. And in my view, that's one of the most effective ways to do political advocacy. There's obviously a lot of different ways to do political advocacy: grassroots organizing, lobbying, paid ads, all kinds of stuff that you guys are familiar with. I like advocacy journalism as a way to do political advocacy, and over the past 2 years we've done it. The concept at the outset was to engineer economic populism coming out of Bernie. No surprise to any of you that I thought and believed strongly. We had a media critique that most media outlets don't care about the plight and the struggle of working people. They don't find it sexy, they don't find it interesting. And I thought, and we thought, that if you told these stories particularly in a video way, that there's an emotional valence there. The stories resonate with people, they can relate to them, and there would be an audience there, and there has been. In 2 years, well over 200 million views, over 1 million followers across all our platforms. Our YouTube numbers are going up and up every single day, and it's just an affirmation that there's hunger. I mean, to your point, if 60% like a union, yeah, you're talking about people who aren't in the Bernie Sanders camp. You're talking about people who are beyond that. You're talking to people who might be and are Republicans in a lot of different places. So there's a breadth of support for these issues that historically, by incentive structure, are not covered by the media. Don't really care. They don't have. But one, we have a bubble problem. They don't follow it. They don't feel it, emote it, know it, and live it. And then you have a financial incentive problem that basically the financial model of journalism is clicks, and because of that, you're just churning out the latest Trump thing here or there, or whatever that gets you clicks, and they call it unbiased journalism. But you're like, no, that's a different bias. It's a bias towards your financial model. So we own an advocacy mission, and so what we have done, and Rachel was mentioning that we have kind of covered a lot of organizing movements. It isn't the sole purpose of what we were trying to do with More Perfect Union. The real purpose was to connect potential political policy actions across the country to these struggles. So if people are dealing with a whole variety of issues in their lives, basic wages and benefits for sure, but also water, electricity issues, school meals, you name it, like Medicaid, Medicare problems. We want to connect those into actions where a lot of those actions could be local or in a specific town, and just basically build populism, change people's consciousness. And I think that has, at this time, in this moment, I think people are hungry for, is there an opportunity to move this needle? Can we move this needle in a positive direction? And I've felt that we've had some great success on that score. They're not well known. We're trying to popularize them, but you have all kinds of efforts from the top to the bottom of taking on monopolies to junk fees, non-compete clauses, and all these kinds of things moving through the administration, but also percolating downwards. So you have state legislatures now moving in the same direction. I think today we had a right to repair bill that passed through Colorado. Universal school lunches now passing through New Mexico and Minnesota. You just see efforts that are changing on economic justice fronts. A different consciousness is set in, and I'm glad that we're playing some degree of a role of incentivizing that kind of behavior. That these are the kinds of issues that had often been relegated to not important of a political conversation. We're trying to have a serious conversation about the January 6th Commission, but we're not going to talk about the struggles of real people on a daily basis. And I think that there is, there's starting to be a movement on that front, both politically and policy-wise, that I'm pretty happy about. And I actually just forgot what was the actual question? Did I even answer it?
Your target audience in particular, do you see young people engaging more? I see your stuff on Twitter, and I feel like the avenue to that's...
Yeah, young people, it's certainly and we always kind of knew and appreciated and understood that young people, because of their inclinations towards unions, would always be a base. But if I'm being honest with you, the real desire of what I'm after is people who aren't already ideologically with us. That's what I'm after. I'm actually into persuasion. I want to talk to people who disagree. I want to convince and persuade them that there's ways, and I say that because I believe, and there's a reason I focus on economic justice issues. We have a society fraught with different challenges on a whole variety of social, racial fronts that I don't know that we're going to easily rectify. People are going to have their values-held beliefs on abortion, on racial justice issues, on the curriculum, this thing or that thing. Those aren't easy to resolve quickly. But what is easy to resolve is the things we already have 60, 70% agreement on. Like, if I told you, like, hey, should we, bust up Ticketmaster so they can't gouge you on your prices for a Taylor Swift concert? 80% agree, right? Like, I'm like, okay, great. Like, I'm going to talk to you about that. I'm going to talk to you about, like, hey, the airlines don't let you pay for family seating, or they pay you extra. You have to pay extra for family seating. Do you want to, do something about that? Yeah, paid leave. Some rail workers don't have paid leave in this country. Do you want that? Like, should we raise the minimum wage to a living wage? Like, basics. Like, you start talking about that, boom. Like, I don't care how many Trump people are in this room, right? We're going to be like, they may not love my politics, but they're going to be like, you got a point there. I see where you're coming from. And we're seeing it with our YouTube channel that a lot of our people who are watching our content, their next major consumption of content is Fox News, right? And so, I think we're starting to get to a crossover appeal, and one of the ways in which we're doing that is you're being intentional about covering stories in East Palestine, Ohio, right? When we're at workers, you connect it with like a struggle of working people all over the country. And you go, talk about ranchers in Missouri and the problems that they're dealing with. As long as you're being thoughtful about the multiracial and cross-generational like working class issues, you can go talk to people that we have disagreements with. That's the big thing that I'm really focused on, because you and I know we have a divided society. Like, how are we going to break through this? And I'm a hell-bent believer that these economic justice issues are the way to do it.
So we have a couple of minutes. So I just wanted to ask you one last question. We will have like small appetizers afterwards with Faiz. So if you want to stick around for that, you can ask more questions. The one question: most of the folks in this room are MBA students. So let's say we come out of this really energized. We want to go out there. Can't unionize, right? Under the NLRA, as soon as we're a manager, we can't unionize. So do we just wait the 15 years till we make it a C-suite, or what can we do now?
Well, are you assuming, when you asked the question, I was going to answer it as like once you enter into the workforce.
Yeah, once we enter into the workforce.
Yeah, and what, I'm going to give you bad advice because your own bosses will hate you for saying it and doing it. But my own advice when I was, to myself as a manager, and I vouch for my whole team hearing this message, I said in one of our first meetings that, what I care a lot about this organization and want to make sure people feel invested in it. And if we get to a point where people feel like they would like to unionize, I would welcome it. If there's ways in which you want to talk about other ways in which we form labor management committees, I'm for it. If there's any other fora in which you want to meet, and discuss anything related to this workplace, I'm for it. And I sent the message right off the top that if anyone's even thinking about wanting to organize, you will not find combat with me. And it's your choice, staff, your choice. You have to make that decision. You have to talk to each other. And in that way, what becomes a healthy byproduct is that, one, you've reduced the bar of unionizing, right? It's not like, now it's not the crucible. It's like, now we did, like, right now, it's like if you get a workplace, it's just like, you feel like you had to accomplish a lot just to get that vote. Like, okay, well, I'm just doing voluntary recognition here. Like, it's fine. That's not the thing. That's not the fight that we have to have. The fight and the conversation that we want to have is, what do we want to change? What do we want to do together? And turn that into a more substantive conversation right off the bat. Like, yeah, we can talk about the format. Ultimately, what unions are is just a format. It's just a process. We've talked about a process. Great. So you got now a process. I'm ambivalent to the process. You decide what process you would like. And if unionizing is one of them, I welcome it. That's a fine process. There's also other labor management committees or whatever. We can do it a lot of different ways. Now let's get to substance. So like, come to me, and I want, again, I'm approaching this where I want people feeling invested in the organization, wanting to stick around, wanting to have good labor management, peaceful relations, and talk and express differences and points of view, and if they feel like things they don't love it, they can say it. It's you aren't going to be penalized. There isn't the wrath of Bezos on your head, or the wrath of who the CEO or Rodney McMullen's going to come in and terrorize me. It's like no. I believe you're here because you want to make this better, and I want to hear from you. And that kind of message is what I would do. And I like laugh myself out of this room because like, you know, I land at like wherever organization you just put me at, and they're going to fire me in an instant for saying that. But like, I have had fine success doing it, and I'm like, it's not that hard, and yet we make it such a big deal. It's so frustrating to me that there's a world, and you know, if you get outside the American boundaries, right, and your borders, and you start to look at European models, and you're like, it's just so much more amicable. You know, it can be that. It's so frustrating to see it. We live in an environment which, you know, workers wanting just to discuss. I mean, if you talk to any Starbucks worker, you ask them, what do you want? And you know, it's usually not, you know, a condition. They'll negotiate the conditions and the wages and stuff. They'll have a lot of different perspectives on those. The thing they want is, can I sit at the table? And it's like, in some sense, it's like you guys asking a professor, can we be in office hours together so I can learn and like hear your wisdom and talk about this business and feel invested and like know something about it? And you're like, it's almost like an eager and honest and authentic ask. And the response is like, get the hell out. How dare you? Go to hell. You're fired. Shutting down that store. And it's like, you know, I've had the great honor and pleasure of traveling with Bernie over the past, you know, 2 years to go and literally meet with these workers. And they inspire you. I mean, they truly do just inspire you because they're just real. There's no bullshit. They're just telling you, like, yeah, life is hard. And I honestly believe they're not going to, at the end of the day, when you sit down with them, my advice to like a Schultz, you sit down and you discuss it. They're not there to say, burn this company down, make it really hard. They just want to know why you made a decision that you made, so you have to justify it. And can we do something in which you help me understand that we could make progress together for workers here, so that they get a win. They get feel a little more invested in the damn place. You know, it's so frustrating that there's so many better approaches to dealing with it. This is basic human relationships, and we are missing it. But knock on wood, we're going to stay at this, and it's going to get better.
Well, on that note, I want to thank Faiz and open it to the room to thank Faiz for his appearance today, his wisdom.
Thank you.